When Mauricio Pochettino was appointed Chelsea manager, he said Chelsea's been the most successful team in England for the last 15 years. So what happened?
You ain't so tough with that bad boy talk. I'ma get it how I'm living, I'ma walk the walk. Outline my lines, I rap through thought.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Football Therapy with me, your host Jan. I hope you're doing well. I really do hope that. Today we're talking about what happened to Chelsea. A little bit more on the long term, the previous regime, the current regime, the managers in between, the players, the spend, the Premier League landscape, and where do we go from here. So I thank you for joining me. Strap yourselves in. First, a quick message from the sponsor. A big thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Haven't sorted yourself out with a VPN yet? Well, it's time you get that virtual private network, and Surfshark is the one for you. A VPN is a tool for browsing the internet that moves your internet's identity to another location, which has many benefits. And Surfshark has over 100 locations that they can send you off to. Why does this benefit you? Well, first of all, it can offer you additional security in this day and age of digital piracy, and can offer you an extra layer of protection to keep your private data safe. The data pirates can't find out where you really are, because Surfshark has sent your location elsewhere. This is not just for protective measures either. You can utilize Surfshark for fun things like unlocking previously unavailable content that was originally only available for people in particular regions. Now with Surfshark at your aid, you can move to said region and have that piece of media unlocked. Surfshark is like a skeleton key that gives you access to the world of entertainment. And my favorite personal reference of this is utilizing it on Netflix. Surfshark being on all devices is a very helpful thing indeed, and whenever I peruse Netflix, I like to move over from the UK's version to the American Netflix, which results in a whole different catalogue of media available to me. So the binge watching is always extended, and I love to sit on the sofa and binge. The great thing about my partnership with Surfshark is that when you use my code FOOTBALL, you get 3 months free. I repeat, when you use my code FOOTBALL, you get 3 months free. Simply click the link in the top of the description and go check out this excellent deal from Surfshark now. Right, so let's get into it. First of all, we have to talk about the Abramovich Era at Chelsea. Pochettino's words did ring true. Chelsea are the most successful team in the last 15 years, winning consistently in the Abramovich era, though of course Manchester City are catching up very quickly. Chelsea enjoyed a ruthless period under Roman Abramovich, hiring and sacking managers, buying and selling players, and generally, most importantly, retaining a winning culture at the club. I suppose a DNA of winning. Chelsea in Stamford Bridge was a fortress. Teams would arrive at Stamford Bridge already knowing they lost. Didn't Jose Mourinho have like a 2-season undefeated streak at Stamford Bridge? Absolutely sensational stuff, really, but it feels a long time ago now. Of course, it's pointless to hark back to these times. Abramovich is no longer Chelsea owner, and Chelsea have new owners, which we'll talk about in just a moment. You could also reflect on that time of success and trophies, a different time, in terms of the Premier League landscape, how teams operate, and the general level. Since then, the Premier League has become even more juiced with finance, and the teams towards the lower end of the Premier League table have become better and better. They've got better players, they're getting better managers, the players are becoming more athletic and fit, the fitness levels due to technology are getting insane, and the playing field has generally been leveled quite a lot. Except maybe for Manchester City and Pep Guardiola. Now, this is a really important point. Of course, it is silly to compare Chelsea to Manchester City at the moment, but it's important to talk about Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, because if Chelsea are to try and win the Premier League again eventually, they will need to better Man City. Now, this is a whole new level of football, one that we've never seen here in the Premier League before. Pep Guardiola's treble winners just show how relentless this team are. The treble is historic, of course, only Manchester United completing it in the Premier League as well, but also leading up to this treble, Man City have just been relentless winning machines, breaking every kind of recognizable record in the league. Yes, they've spent money, but as Chelsea fans will know, spending money doesn't always equal immediate success. And Manchester United fans would probably tell you that as well. So in terms of winning the league, you have to think, well, we've got a whole new level of alien football with Pep Guardiola. But like I said, Chelsea are far off that for the moment. They just need to think about becoming a good team again. Enter Chelsea's new owners. The Todd Boehly and Clearlake Capital era has begun over a year ago, and they've outlaid about £1 billion. Now, we know that's not net spend. Chelsea have actually generated a biblical amount of revenue in that time as well, and I believe they shaved off about £125 million per year off their wage bill, which is fantastic work in terms of finances, but they are spending lots and lots and lots. Now, it's important to note these owners see football differently than the Roman Abramovich gang. On the face of it, that will frustrate Chelsea fans because they looked at the Roman Abramovich era and saw winning, they looked at what's going on right now and see dysfunction. But it's important to note, become lucid to the fact how the Abramovich model was no longer working in the Premier League. Yes, we won the Champions League under Thomas Tuchel, but really that was an exception to the rule of Chelsea's general long-term failings domestically. The model had to change, and the model had to try and emulate that of Manchester City, and that's kind of what Chelsea are trying to do. The new owners are trying to make Chelsea a functioning sporting entity, when before it was a little bit money still, but vibes as well, and the vibes kind of fizzled away and no longer became a tenable way of running a football club. Of course, Roman Abramovich just hired and fired at will. The board members were essentially his mates, and Chelsea always overpaid players in terms of wages. Now enter Boehly and Clearlake, and they've built a board fit for purpose with the relevant sporting people on the board, and of course they've put a couple of Chelsea fans on there as well, lifelong Chelsea fans for good measure. They're trying to implement a sporting structure with 2 sporting directors. Me personally, I have been calling out for Chelsea to hire a sporting director for so long. Other clubs use them, other clubs are successful. Of course, we enjoyed the time of Michael Emenalo as technical director, and actually Chelsea were quite successful in that time, and Emenalo himself brought in a lot of wonderful players. Of course, he sort of oversaw the Belgian Revolution, bringing in Courtois, Kevin De Bruyne, and Eden Hazard. Direction was lost at Chelsea without a sporting director, a technical director. The new owners are trying to re-implement this, and they've brought in co-sporting directors, which in theory all works great. They've tried to dissect the Roman Abramovich era and seen its faults. And of course, there were a lot of dysfunctions in the Roman Abramovich era, and there was no sort of future planning, longevity, which actually left Chelsea in trouble financially a lot of the time. This is why the new owners are trying to do long-term contracts, buying players young, putting them on low wages for 8-9 year contracts, and trying to build around that long term, which is more intelligent business in terms of finances and asset protection. And you'd think as well, you're buying young talents to develop in the club, and you're not buying already inflated egos, and you're buying young players to develop with each other long term. All works in theory, right? Which brings me to the spend. Chelsea have of course spent ridiculous amounts of money, but like I've just said, Chelsea are also paying for previous mistakes. There was no long-term planning in Chelsea Football Club, and by the time the new Chelsea owners arrived at the club, there was so much dysfunction in the squad. Lots of players that are being overpaid, lots of players that cost way too much money, and loads of players that didn't want to be there, and loads of players that simply just don't fit each other in terms of being compatible teammates systemically. Like I said, the Roman Abramovich era represents hiring and firing managers with different tactics, different philosophies, different play styles. So the new manager comes in and tries to tape it all together. Now and again, you get a Thomas Tuchel that does it really well in terms of just protecting Thiago Silva at the back, playing a double six, and defending well, not giving up chances, and you win the Champions League. But that's not a long-term developed ethos. That is simply trying to paper over the chasms that has been developed at Chelsea over the last few years. So to prevent that happening long-term, you have to rip it up and start again. Hence Chelsea's biblical amount of spend with $1 billion or whatever, 400 million net spend, but trying to do it in such a way with low wages and amortizing the transfer fee long term. Many people that follow Chelsea closely or cover Chelsea like me will let you know kind of this is a long term coming. Did they need to spend this much money? No, they could have bought cheap players, but you know, they're following their data, and their data suggests these are the players they need for the project long term. So now let's talk about the project. The project initially represented Graham Potter, the happy smiley guy that doesn't upset anyone, whether it's the players or indeed the management above him. Good at managing up and down in theory. That theory failed, of course, and he was probably too much of a soft touch. Again, this was a data-led decision by the new ownership. Potter was on an upward trend. They analysed him as a personality and thought he really could be a long-term good manager for them. Of course, the LA Dodgers manager over in America, of course, that Todd Bowley owns, he's been there for like a decade. They've been incredibly successful. They're like the Manchester City of baseball, and they've basically have their own Guardiola locked down, and they want to do that at Chelsea. They want a long-term manager, a long-term project, and the word that we've been lacking for so long: stability. Potter failed and they brought in Pochettino. Now, it's the same plan, essentially. A guy who they feel they can work with long term, a guy who they feel sees the vision and understands and wants to coach these young players, but a guy that they feel can rebuild the culture at Chelsea, which of course has been completely decimated. It's gone. There is no culture at Chelsea left anymore, and that's probably largely because all the players went at once. Maybe if they could do it again, they would time it differently in terms of selling the players, but maybe they just feel like there's an element of ripping off the plaster, the band-aid, going through a really difficult time and rebuilding slowly from the ground up. A really slow, painful rebuild. This rebuild, of course, includes a lot of youth. That's right, Chelsea have bought so many under 22 players, 21 or under really, so many, and Chelsea fans and indeed football pundits are now questioning, is there a lack of experience in the squad? Is there too much naivety? And you'd have to say, probably. Yes, and maybe they know that, maybe they planned for that and thought, well, it's just, again, teething issues that we're going to have to push through in the early stages as they develop together. They'll look for seniority in the management, in Thiago Silva at the back, or, you know, the fullbacks in Reece James and Ben Chilwell. Maybe they think, while they settle into the Premier League and learn each other and learn the philosophy, we're just going to have to take the hit for a while. Chelsea won't keep buying kids forever. Eventually, these ones will grow up and they'll just utilize these ones. Right? That's how it's going to happen, right? And finally, I do want to reiterate some more stuff on the culture, the fear factor, because Chelsea for so long were a scary team to play. We were a big team of titans, big characters, front to back. We were riddled with international captains, you know, whether it's, you know, John Terry, Drogba, Ballack, you know, Essien. They were all over the pitch, and Petr Cech and stuff. Chelsea were basically the senior authoritative team that bullied opposition and just wanted to win because they really backed themselves. And, you know, comparatively where we are now with the aforementioned children across the pitch, they're of course just not going to hold this air of authority. So Chelsea have to win another way. I mean, maybe these players will eventually develop that sort of aura, if you will, and then the culture will come back of just relentless winning. But in the meantime, we're really going to have to lean into the systemic style of play, the data. I guess the Guardiola style of football. Of course, Manchester City themselves have a culture of winning now. When you just win every week, it ingrains into you and you have the standards, but they had the Guardiola technical football to lean into. So if you don't have that culture at the moment, do we have that at Chelsea? Can Pochettino offer that? Well, I guess he still really feels like the man for the job for this particular problem, because Chelsea are looking to build long term and bring in young talent. If there's one thing that everyone can agree on with Mauricio Pochettino is he's probably the best coach, or the best top tier coach in terms of developing and coaching young players. And what he has been synonymous with his teams scoring goals. But of course, Chelsea aren't scoring goals. It is early days, of course, but something's got to give sooner rather than later. So, how do you make Chelsea great again? Do you bring in more senior players? Do you just give it time? I guess things just need to settle down a little bit. There is a fallout from the transition of ownership. There is a fallout from the massive clear out of the squad and the massive influx of young, talented international players that need to settle in this country, you know, this city, this club with this language. There's a lot of stuff to consider. Ultimately, though, Chelsea need to settle. But something will have to give eventually, because like I said at the top of the video, Pochettino says Chelsea is about winning. It's the most successful team in the last 15 years. But you got your work cut out for you, mate. Is there light at the end of the tunnel? Well, I wanted to highlight these factors in this video for you today, and I look forward to hearing the responses from you guys down in the comment section. Thanks for liking and subscribing, and I'll see you very soon.